this is Paul. I made a little video that I posted yesterday about the first day of the conference in Washington, D.C. Today is Tuesday, so it's a couple of days behind me. And thought I'd make a little video about the second day. Now, I did make a video with a conversation with Father Eric and Mark and Laura and Molly, and I posted that on the No Wait No Ads channel. That will get released to the main channel. Now again, because Joe left a comment about paying $7 to hear a debrief of the conference that he put on, so sorry about that, Joe. But just again to explain the tiers behind the membership, there's the $3 membership, which is just more behind the scenes, personal, off-topic videos, so that's $3 a month. The $7 a month is no wait, no ads. And so basically, I often wind up with some videos that I'm going to release to the whole channel, but I don't necessarily want to sit on them for that long. And there's some people that pay very close attention to what's happening in the corner. And so that channel is really for those who can't wait to see the conversation that I'm having with such and such a person, or I make a comment about a video that's coming out later. So that's sort of the sneak preview level of membership. And then there's the $25 a month membership, which is just plain support. And those people are going to have their own special Calendly link, basically. That's what they're going to get for the $25 a month level. So those are the three levels. So, and I noticed that when I got back to my sister's place here in Connecticut, that Google said, oh, you can turn this on so people who are not in the membership channels can see the kind of things that are in the membership channels. So I turned that on. So if you go to the site web page, the page on YouTube, there is a list of membership videos, so you can see the kind of things that I'm making there. So if you're interested in that, you can get that. And again, the basic membership, the Randos membership, that's just $3 a month, so that's not much. But I did want to talk a little bit about day 2 in the Washington, D.C. Christ and Renewing Culture Conference. So this conference was quite a bit shorter and quite a bit smaller than the Chino conference. The Chino conference was 200 people, and the Thursday we had the Paintball for Jesus event, and then Friday morning the conference started and went from Friday morning all the way through into Friday evening, including lunch and dinner, and then Saturday morning breakfast, and then Saturday morning, noon, and all the way into the evening. Saturday the Chino conference went, and then Sunday we had more events. And so that Chino and Thunder Bay were sort of modeled after each other, and those were very big, very long events, tons of time. This was a much smaller, shorter event. This was about 35 people, and we met from Friday 10 a.m. till 5 p.m., or I'm sorry, Saturday 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., and then Sunday 10 a.m. to about 12:30 p.m. And that Sunday segment of the conference was predominantly estuary style. So one of the things that I realized during this conference again was that John Vendonk's idea, by the way, if you haven't noticed it on the regular channel, when I'm at home, we have the Freddie and Paul show for Freddie and I, and so then Rick sent me the Freddie and John show. So Freddie and John sat down and had their own version of the show, including a rap, and John made ungracious comments about Canada geese, even though John began his life in North America as an immigrant to Canada, not the United States, eventually made his way to the United States. So if you haven't seen the Freddie and John show, watch the Freddie and John show. I thought it was hilarious. But we opened the Chino conference with everyone first channeled into an estuary group in the morning, even in Friday morning before the conference itself started. And I remember when John said that, I had my doubts, because I thought, wow, you're going to go to this, because getting people to participate in the estuary, the small breakout estuary thing, some people really don't want to do that, and so they sort of balk at that. But part of what my design for this, let's call it an ecology of conferences, which is what is emerging. My design for an ecology of conferences is that, this is a basic rule that I've used in local ministry for a very long time, he or she who does decides. Because what you get in a church often is someone has an idea and someone pulls off an event, and there's a whole bunch of other people in the background that say, well, they shouldn't have done it that way, they should have done it this way, or they should have done it that way. And what I always tell them is, well, why don't you make an event, and then you can do it the way you think it should be done, and then you'll teach us all the way it should be done. Because almost always actually doing something is way more difficult than sitting on the sidelines and critiquing or commenting or saying, yeah, it should have gone this way. So at the Chino conference, John had people Friday morning first go to an estuary group, and that really worked well, because many people go to these conferences knowing some people. One of the things that I realized again at this conference, because these conferences are done sort of in the context of these YouTube channels, even though people might not have met the other people in person that they see at the conference, because they've had some maybe conversation on a Just Chatting or some conversation on a Discord server or some connection one way or another via the internet, once they get to the in-person live event, there's sort of at first this uncanny valley, because I sort of know this person, but I don't really know this person. And it takes a little bit of time to sort of get synced up and back on the right page, but sort of off they go. So when they go to a conference like this, they don't feel like they don't know anyone, because they've already gotten to know some of the people a little bit. And that includes, you know, meeting, say, somebody like me who puts in a lot of time on YouTube. I've told this story before, but if you go back to my April 2018 conversation with Jordan Peterson, you know, having just even on YouTube, having him talk back, it's a little bit of a surreal thing, and we kind of have to adjust to it. So there's a fair number of people who come to these conferences and they already know some people there. Sometimes people come to these conferences and they come with their spouse. Again, there were a few individuals who came to this conference with their spouse, which is really tremendous to me, because it shows that, well, you know, their spouse is kind of curious, and usually one is into it more than the other, but they go together, and that's a really cool thing. But there are always some people who come to these conferences and maybe they haven't been active in a Discord server, or maybe they haven't been active in the comment sections or on Twitter or in the Just Chatting channels, and so they don't know anybody there. And so then it always feels, this is always a problem with church too, it always feels it's just a little bit awkward at first. I don't know anyone, and maybe the person's a little introverted, and so they kind of hang back and they look around the room and they try to figure out what's going on. When they start out in an estuary group, right away, it's sort of like freshman orientation at college. They already sort of have a little pack to sit by and to eat lunch with, and to talk about, to debrief, and to do all of that. So I thought it was really smart on John's part at the Chino conference to start the Chino conference with that estuary experience for a lot of different people, because it meant that when the first thinky talky session starts, then they already have a friend to sit by, and they already have someone during the break that they can say, oh, I thought this, oh, I thought that. So that's a really cool thing. So Sunday morning, we began with Nate giving a little introduction into estuary, and we had a good number of estuary leaders there. And so we broke up into 6 groups, and we had 6 people that had participated in John Van Donk's ELSNet. That's the Estuary Host Support Leadership. John's going to make a comment here because he knows I'm going to get this wrong. But basically, if you're interested in an estuary group, go to estuaryhub.org and click a link there to sign up for. Now I'm getting wind noise. I don't want that. So you can sign up for John Van Donk's Estuary Leader Support Hub Network, and where basically, if you want to be an estuary leader, just a few sessions with that group, you'll very much have a community to start talking about this and to start figuring out if this is right for you, and to see what people who have actually started estuary groups, to learn from them, and have some community with people who aspire to start an estuary group, but for one reason or another, things just haven't come together yet for them. And those groups themselves also become estuary groups for individuals. So John Van Donk is running that. But we had 6 leaders from those groups who could just jump right in. So we just went around the circle. So the first day we had people behind tables, and that's sort of a more professorial thing. We moved all the tables out of the way for the second day and put the chairs in a big circle. Then we counted off by 6, and then we had 6 different stations that people would go to. And I actually had Spencer Clavin in my little group, and many of you might remember Anne from Connecticut, that the Father I Have Sinned video. That was really an extraordinary Randall's conversation. So she was in my group. Another woman, very interesting woman, an engineer, who she told me a little bit of her story there. Very interesting. And then the wife of one of the ElseNet leaders who was very familiar with this. And so our little group, broke out from the group. And again, we just started doing the estuary thing. Went around and introduced ourselves a little bit, and then basically bid, the idea that we put on the table for conversation. And in the third round, and I thought Nate Heil really nailed it. It's that round after everybody sort of shares their idea. That's really where the magic happens in the estuary protocol, where people start. It's very much what Richard Rowland was talking about to Grim Grizz, where people start integrating and synthesizing all the different things that are around in that little group. And that's really where usually the dialogos happens. What I mean by that is there's a spiritual thread that develops. It's sort of like the angel of the conversation. The spirit of the conversation begins to emerge. And that's sort of a holy moment. It's sort of a sacred moment when everyone there who has participated really has a sense that we have come into this little space and we are now making something. And what we are making is a satisfying, vulnerable, beautiful conversation. Now, of course, it doesn't always work, but it worked beautifully. And what I found at these conferences, especially because the people who come to these conferences are usually the people who have been sort of the most invested in the conversation and the most invested in the community, because they have taken time out of their calendar, they've expended money on transportation and lodging and the conference fee, and so just as in Chino, they came ready to do it. And so when we hit the estuary groups, in my group, but I heard, we had a debrief after where we all went in a circle, and the other groups too, I just heard what we usually hear, a lot of people really moved. You always know when, you always, oh, breeze, come on, settle down, there you go, okay. You always know when it works, because this was quite remarkable in my little group too, because people start really getting personal, and they start getting more and more vulnerable and more transparent, and they start sharing more about themselves and more about their life, and it was really beautiful. It always surprises me when you can sort of grab 5 or 6 strangers. So I'd had that one randos conversation with Anne. I'd been getting to know Spencer a little bit. The other 2 individuals I really hadn't spoken with hardly at all, and it was quite remarkable. It was quite remarkable, the level of sharing, and that we only had like a half hour, but yet I think 45 minutes maybe. But people really leaned into it and began to share, and it was really a holy moment. And from what I heard from the other groups, they had similar things. And for me, not every estuary session works out that way. There are always better and there are worse, and it depends to a degree on the people that are there. But it was really very remarkable, and it was very moving. So then after we had our estuary breakout groups, we all came together and then had, amongst the 35 of us, a more open conversation about a number of things. People sharing out of the estuary groups, people having questions about it. Again, one of the big things about this conference in particular, this was one of the most overtly Christian groups and conferences that we had done. And that's not at all a bad thing. One of the things that I often want to guard is I want to it sounds counterproductive and ironic for a clergyman to say this, but I really want to sort of keep space and hold space for the atheists and for the non-religious. What are you doing there, my sister? You're videoing me making a video? Why don't you come into the camera and show your face? This is what she's doing. There she is. There's my sister taking a video. I gotta warn you, I moved some dog poop from over there that I had stepped in before. I had to clean off my shoe, so don't step in it when you're coming down. Or
Thank you.
You'll know it because you'll smell it. You'll smell it. So that was my sister, Ann Clay. Did you rename your channel yet? Did you decide?
No.
She's still working on it. If you just look for Ann Clay, ANNECLAY, you can see she's sort of riffing on the, Vander Clay thing. But yeah, so where was I? Oh yeah, this was one of the most religious of the conferences that we've had. And again, the whole schema behind these conferences for me has been let the individual people who are putting the conference together. So Thunder Bay, it was really Catherine and Eamon who did the Thunder Bay conference. This conference, it was really Joe and Marcus from Northern Ireland, I got to get Joe's channel right, just with Joe. And other times it's sort of an Estuary that is putting the conference together. Again, two of them that are sort of in the planning. They're trying to put together Israel in February 2024 and Kansas City and Oklahoma, or is it Arkansas? Arkansas. Ted, I talked to, he sent me an email. I haven't answered him back, but there's a conference that Ted from Arkansas that I had on the channel just recently. He's putting together one of those. So one in Arkansas, and then Israel coming up, and then Kansas City coming up, and others continuing to think about it. Others continuing to say, I'd like a conference. To the Minneapolis crew, I don't know what's with you guys, but you have so many key leaders and so many. You guys should have 2 or 3 or 4 estuary groups in Minneapolis, and you should be already thinking about an estuary conference in Minneapolis. I mean, there's Luke Thompson, there's CW, there's Paul Anleitner, and there's a bunch of other people too that I've met from Minneapolis, and so they've really got the makings of a great movement in Minneapolis, but they just haven't sort of had it gel yet to put it together. So anyway, each of the groups has, when they put a conference together, they put it together according to who they want there, what they want it to be. One of the things we talked about towards the end of the session Sunday was also, what other people to have involved. Now, of course, it sort of got going with myself and John Vervaeke and Jonathan Peugeot, and that's what they're looking at for Israel. In Germany, it was myself and John Van Donk and Burn Power. Coming up in Germany, Andrea with the Bangs, and then another guy sort of more from the Vervaeke side of things. I really got to get together with him and do a randos conversation with him. But each of the groups sort of brings in different people, and we want to sort of continue to expand the ecosystem and continue to expand the voices. So I was super happy that Michael Martin and Spencer Clavin were sort of the headliners of this conference. And I think as this thing develops, we'll see more and more people. Some people have been Marcus at More Christ and Nate Heil at Grail Country. And Karen Wong, they've been super good about sort of bringing different voices into the conversation. So getting those voices and some of those people, Jordan Daniel Wood, for example, Chris Green, Reverend Chris Green, who Nate had on his channel. I should really reach out to him. I've got some conversations coming up with Josh Butler, the guy who wrote the book that caused all the firestorm in Evangelical. I'll be talking to him. I'm going to have a proper randos conversation with Aaron Wren coming up. I'm going to have actually Justin Brierly's going to interview me, and then I'm going to interview Justin Brierly. So Justin's coming on the channel. As I said, Joshua Butler, who wrote that book that sort of ruffled a lot of feathers, I've got him coming up on the channel. Damian Walter, who does the science fiction stuff. If you haven't seen the Rebel Wisdom conversation with Jonathan Peugeot and Damian Walter and David Fuller, that was an outstanding conversation. I really want to go back to that. And especially as I continue to process that hideous strength, I want to, continue to bring in the science fiction element of this. One of the things that came up also, so sort of expanding the number of speakers in this space. Now I've forgotten the point I was going to make. So basically the main point was that each conference is going to be different. Some conferences are going to be more specifically and obviously and ostensibly Christian. Other conferences are going to be less so, and I think that's frankly healthy right now. One of the people at this conference, who she's basically had her own, how should we say it, transformation or renaissance. She was raised Catholic, and then, like many in her 20s, she walked away from the faith, and now later in life she's come back to it, and the conversations in this little corner have been a big piece of her coming back to it. And so she's come back to the Catholic Church. And but part of what she talked about was, she's very concerned that we continue to help people who are at this point sort of turned off by religious language, religious talk, perhaps because of some trauma they had in the church, or maybe just new atheist influence or something, that we continue to make our conversations hospitable and open to them. Well, here comes a breeze. So that's a big concern of mine as well. And so yeah, I think as we have conferences, we're going to see this sort of balance out. One of the concerns we had in Chino was we didn't have another non-Christian speaker. At Thunder Bay, we had, of course, Jonathan Peugeot and myself as Christians on stage, and we had John Vervaeke and Richard Mondrell as sort of people who don't identify as Christians or go to church, or however we want to. I don't want to characterize Richard Mondrell necessarily in ways that are unfair, I don't know, but in that sense we want to have very open, very much want to keep this space not Christian exclusive, I'll say it that way. So that's a big issue. So that's most of what I thought about. I've got lots of other thoughts. When I go on these, when I'm not in Sacramento, when I'm regularly sitting in front of the camera, I have so many ideas and I jot them down, and I'll never make videos for all of them. I didn't bother putting on a mic because I thought, no, it's pretty still, I won't need this, and I didn't put on the little windscreen on the camera. I'll have to remember to do that. It's always learning about this or that. So again, Wednesday night, August 2, Pleasant Street Christian Reformed Church, Whitensville, Massachusetts. We'll have a meetup, Estuary meeting, and the two pastors of the two Whitensville Christian Reformed churches are going to be there. Another retired minister that I just had breakfast with this morning, he's going to be there. And I know I've heard from a bunch of you already that you're going to be there. I'm sure we're going to have some people from Pleasant Street that are curious about what Henry Osterman's grandson is doing now. Crazy thing, he made these Senate videos and now he's coming to church doing all this other crazy stuff, and who are these people coming in? So there'll be some people who are just kind of curious about the whole thing, looking in and watching. So that's 7 to 9 p.m. Pleasant Street Christian Reformed Church, Whitensville, Massachusetts. I don't have the zip code off the top of my head, but if you just Google Pleasant Street Christian Reformed Church, Whitensville, Massachusetts, you'll be able to find it on the map. So I think that's pretty much what I have in mind now, and because my sister's a YouTuber, she was able to get fiber here at the farm, which is wonderful, so I can quick put this video together and upload it. And yeah, so again, those of you who, probably coming out tomorrow or the next day. I'll post the conversation that I had with Father Eric and Mark and Laura and Molly, sort of the debrief after the conference. And if you absolutely can't wait, you can find that in the no wait, no ads level of the channel. And yeah, I think that's what I have to say now. And here comes another breeze. So leave a comment. Let me know what you think.